Hey guys, and welcome to Fantasy Football 101. My name is Chris Norman. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Matthew Primo.
Hi.
That would be him, and Mr. Curtis Broom.
What's up, guys and gals?
Uh, we are excited for this. This is something that we've wanted to do for a while. Curtis and I have talked about this in the past, and honestly, we talk about fantasy football during the season for probably an hour and a half a day anyway, and during the off season for probably an hour a day. So we just thought, why not? Let's try it out, see how it goes, and share our gospel with the rest of the world. So we are excited to give it a
Indeed.
shot. This is going to be the flagship episode and the maiden voyage. We're going to try to keep it as simple as we can, but sometimes we go too in depth. Like Matt was actually telling me last night that he hadn't actually had that much time to put that much research in, and that's perfect for me, because that's kind of the point of this, is we want to do most of the work for you. So it'll be kind of cool to have a fresh perspective versus, the two guys that obsess over it nonstop. And I guess without further ado, let's get going. We're going to go through quarterbacks today. I've got full list of ADPs, but we're just going to kind of take it from the top and work our way down as far as we want to go, talking about tiers and who's a value, who's not. So I guess, let's start with tier. Actually, let's save tier 1 for last, because that's going to be the most in-depth. Let's start from the bottom. Curtis.
Bottom to the top.
Yep.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Now we're here. Oh, and also, best of luck to all of us. I'm hoping that this is the first of many, many episodes and the first day toward my early retirement. That's my ultimate goal in this, so help us out, guys.
And as per the usual, I will make sure I draft at least 3 of these.
Out of the top 10. He's not lying. He will.
Yeah. Three quarterbacks. A bulletproof strategy.
Yeah. Save that note, sir. Save that note. I have something for that. I do have something for that. But
Bold move, Cotton.
all right, I've got my top 10 in 2 tiers, because this year's quarterback list was actually, for people that I think you can use, it was actually bigger than I think it's been in a while. But starting in tier 2, I've got Stroud, Richardson, Burrow, Prescott, Murray, and Jordan Love. That's 5 through 10. Curtis, what have you got? Anybody there particular that you want to talk about in depth? I know you've got 2, but
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got it broken down into the top 10 into 4 tiers.
let's hear it.
I think, yeah, I think starting from the bottom, I think we have Burrow, Prescott, Murray, and Love all in one tier. And I think Stroud and Richardson are in their own tier 3. And I think Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson is tier 2. And I think at the very top, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts are in their own stratosphere on their own. And each individual one, I think, has questions and upside and etc. But I'm going to start off here at the bottom with Jordan Love. Is he Brett Favre? Has Green Bay just done it again? Like, just keep, just rotating in top 10 quarterbacks like it's nothing.
I think they have, and they think they have. That dude just got the bag.
He just got
Dude,
paid. He just made
he did.
lots of money and has easily one of the deepest, most youthful wide receiver rooms in the league. I mean, going all the way down to Bo Melton, the Butterman. Shout out to fantasy footballers. That's one of their little takes.
Yes,
But
indeed.
I mean, their wide receiver room is just so deep. I mean, and outside of that, you have upcoming tight ends like Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft's in the weeds. He's recovering from a pectoral tear. But nonetheless, Jordan Love has no absence of weapons. Oh, yeah, and let's not forget brand new toy Josh Jacobs in the RB room.
It can't hurt.
So I think there's a lot to love with Love. And let's not forget he does use his feet. He's considered a pocket passer, but Chris, you're more of the numbers guy. I don't know if you have any of his rushing yards. I should have made a note of that, but I know he did have, I mean, I want to say at least 5 rushing touchdowns. I could be wrong about that.
Very
But,
close. It was 4.
yeah, and he's a big guy. He's not some small dude. Uh, I like Love a lot. I think you miss out on some of these elite options. I think Love is a perfect guy to come to in those later rounds to pick up. You can you don't even have to, you can stack them with a plethora of wide receivers, So I think he's a great option there at
I
10.
will disagree with absolutely nothing you just said. Jordan Love is a guy that if I miss out on a top four, which I probably will because I have a very bad habit of just not wanting to take a quarterback that early. Uh, Love is somebody I have all the confidence in the world in. Like you said, I mean, their offense has only gotten better. That coaching staff knows what they're doing. Um,
Hmm.
at the time that Aaron Rodgers and all the drama happened, and he was essentially shipped out, you know, of his own accord per
Yeah.
se, I thought it was ridiculous. I was like, dude, you've just got this automatic Hall of Famer, like what, 3-time MVP, two, something like that, Super Bowl winning quarterback, and you're just letting him go. But then I saw why. I mean, I'm not saying the dude's better than Aaron Rodgers already, but he definitely has potential. And just to put a number on it, his rushing is better than probably all but 6 or 7 that you're going to find this year. And the numbers are still, I won't say they're mid. I mean, they're good for a quarterback. He plays like a pocket passer, though. So when you have somebody that's going to throw for 4,200 yards and 32 touchdowns, and you're not counting on rushing, but you also get 250 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns on the ground like you got last year, it can't hurt. I honestly think I think you're robbing the blind if you get him at the 10 spot. Get him at the
Yeah,
QB 10.
I
And
agree 100%.
right now, QB 10 is a late ninth round ADP. So
Yeah.
you can
Hmm.
quote unquote punt the position and have yourself a top 5 guy by the end of the year. Last year was his full year as a starter, and he still finished top 5, and the offense is only getting better. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
yeah.
Which kind of brings us
So,
right on up to the number 9 spot. That's going to be Kyler Murray. I'll take this one first, but you did such a good job breaking down Jordan Love that there's not a lot I can say about Kyler Murray because I kind of view them in almost the exact same pocket. Um,
hmm.
the Cardinals were a mess last year. They were surprisingly better looking offensively than I think anybody thought they were going to be, myself included. But when Kyler got back, you could just see the chemistry between the coaching staff, the play calling, and Kyler's abilities. It was like somebody finally took what he could do and, tried to use that to make a playbook. It was actually really good to watch. And we'll talk about receivers in a little while, but, in the draft this year, I think it's safe to say they addressed their receiver room well enough that Kyler's going to give you everything you might need. And in my
Yeah.
opinion, his value in the draft is identical to Jordan Love. He's 6 picks ahead of him, but he's still in the 9th round. So again, if you punt the position, I love everybody in this tier, honestly. These are more my kind of
Yeah.
speed
Yeah.
guys because I don't like losing that 2nd or 3rd round pick on a quarterback. Even though when
Hmm.
we get there, we'll talk about why it might be worth it. But you got anything to add on him?
I just also want to emphasize, I know he's coming off the ACL last year, but Kyler Murray is a rusher. I mean, even with half a season, I don't know if you have the number, but he had multiple rushing touchdowns. He's going to have multiple rushing touchdowns. He's going to have more yardage than guys like Love. Prescott really doesn't run anymore since he tore his ankle to pieces, but he's going to have upside close to someone like probably a Jalen Hurts, someone like that with, not saying he gets there. I mean, he won't have
Sure.
the tush push, but overall yardage numbers, he'll have rushing yards. But yeah, I love Murray and the fact that they brought in the wide receiver, best prospect we've seen since, Jamar Chase. It's nothing but, I mean, we could be talking about Murray up here in the top 5 next year. Like he could be, it's like, I mean, we could be talking about Patrick Mahomes or Kyler Murray next year, depending on, how the season goes. So I think Murray's a great pick. I think you have to take him, about 2 rounds earlier than Love, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was about around 7, maybe
Well,
around 8 pick.
on sleeper, he's in the same round. He's just at the top. Now that doesn't
Okay.
mean
All
that
right.
doesn't mean you're going to get him in the 9th round. I think anybody that thinks pretty in depth on Kyler Murray either knows he's better than that or has no faith in him at all. So my advice would be if you're targeting a Kyler Murray in the draft, you might want to be thinking about it in round 7, unless you've got a swing pick and you think he can get around to round 8. Because I don't
Yeah.
I look for his ADP to shift a little bit north now that the camp reports are coming out, and you know they're not bad. They're good reports, trust me.
Yeah,
Everybody's saying he is back to form. He's gonna climb. I think
yeah.
I think the latest you can gamble on him is gonna be the early to middle of the eighth. But like I
Hmm.
said, if you want him, I think you need to reach in 7.
Yeah, I think he's worth it
I do
as
too.
well.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. All right. So anything else you want to add before we move on?
Just a small frame of reference. He only played in half the games that Jordan Love played in last year, and while his passing numbers were in those 8 games, points per game, his passing numbers weren't nearly as efficient, but he did rush for the same amount of yardage and the same amount of touchdowns in half the time. So you're going to get a balance.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So moving on to our next guy, Dak Prescott coming in at quarterback number 7, who finished, am I not mistaken, did he not finish the top 5 last year? I should have that. I put a lot more notes down on receivers. I was a little less prepared on our quarterbacks,
Oh,
but
you're fine, buddy. I got you. Yeah, he was the
yeah.
number 3.
Yeah, number 3 quarterback,
And
and we are getting quite a discount. And as far as wide receiver, I mean, it's all the same, minus uh, um, the guy who went to the Raiders and retired. I'm drawing a blank on his name,
Michael Gallup?
but nonetheless,
Was that
Michael
Michael Gallup?
Gallup.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Gallup. Yeah, we don't have Michael Gallup anymore, so I don't know if he'll be able to survive without him. But nonetheless, I mean, we all know this. We've got CeeDee Lamb, the number 1 receiver in football right now. And the offense, I mean, they didn't add Jonathan Brooks, they didn't add Traylon Burks, they drafted no running backs. They're rolling out Hall of Famer Zeke Elliott and Mr. Irrelevant Rico Dowdle.
It's not going to be
And
good.
I mean, yeah, we got Mr. Royce Freeman in the wings as well. So I mean, this team is just going to flow through the quarterback and the receivers. I mean, I don't see the running backs adding much to this. So I mean, unless, Jerry Jones just implodes this team and, they just can't sustain an offense, I think Dak is just a smash. And he's not as sexy as these guys like Love and Murray and doesn't run anymore, but I mean, just good old reliable, man. I don't think you can go wrong if you get in a spot and you're looking for somebody with some upside and Dak's there. And because he's going after Murray, and man, yeah, I like him. I think Dak's awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
I,
I'm
I've said for years I don't really understand people's issues with Dak Prescott. I mean, if you look back a couple years, he had a couple stagnant years where he was your go-to 20 to 22 point quarterback, which is fine because that's kind of where he was being drafted even at that time, but it does seem like every single year when he has a season like he did, well, he may not never have another season like he did last year, but when he has a top tier season, he's still just discounted the next year for whatever reason.
yeah,
I don't know. He just
and
seems like a safe pick, but you're going to get those weeks where for whatever reason the Cowboys will win 42-7 because the defense scores 2 touchdowns and the offense doesn't have to do
hmm
anything. But you're also going to get those weeks where he'll have 5 points at halftime and they'll have 35 points by the end of the game. You know,
yeah,
I guess
garbage time, man.
that's the issue with Dak is he can be a little unpredictable in how that offense works and how the team is coached. But either way, man, you're talking about the number 3 quarterback from last year. He still has his best weapon. I don't. I don't see why he's going as the QB8 to be honest, but if I'm looking at him in the 8th round where he's projected to go as of right now, I might want to take the Kyler Murray gamble and try to buy myself one more round. But if I don't think I can make it all the way back, I have no issue taking Dak where he's at.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question on Dak is can he repeat and can Dallas repeat, which is going to tie in to our receiver conversations with numero uno at the top there, Mr. Lamb. But and I mean they're in a semi-tough division. I think the Giants are going to take a step forward in defense, be a little tougher. That might be a hot take on me, but I really think Giants will have a good defense this year. Washington, who knows? We're excited about Washington's offense, but who knows with that defense? I don't think they're anything. But you got Philly, who, I mean,
Philly's
I mean,
gonna be
on
good.
defense. Philly's going to be good, you know. I mean, it's a tough, it's just a known for a hard division. All those divisional games are sluggish and drag out. But I'm comfy with Dak. I just think he doesn't have the excitement as some of these other guys, and I think that's why he gets a little slept on. But if you're not worried about that, you just want points and you want to exploit all your other positional advantages, I think Dak is a great selection.
Yeah, no disagreement there. You got anything on
Yeah.
Dak Primo? I know you're a super fan.
Oh, super
I'm,
fan Dak?
no, I'm actually not.
I know.
I'm actually not.
just messing
No.
with you. I've heard you shit talk Dak in the past, so
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
he's from the Cowboys. I mean, you gotta shit talk him a little bit, you know.
oh yeah.
Well,
America's
they're
team,
they're
baby. Come on.
they're gonna do really good up until the playoffs, and then they're just gonna shit the bed.
that
But
yeah, that's
but to be fair, at least they make the playoffs.
and
Get dogged out by Jordan Love in the playoffs.
dude, just
Oh man.
didn't even like that. Man, that is it. Cowboy culture is funny to me because I asked
Yeah.
one simple question to somebody that's not a fan about Dak, and the Cowboys just ate shit. Like, just, it's so funny. Just that quick. Get owned, Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we got one more in that last tier, and I want to do him individually because there's a lot of question marks and there's a lot of back and forth on him. So let's cover Joe Burrow. Right now he is ADP 64.5, which is going to be round 7. I base these ADPs off a 10-man league just because they're the most common and they're the easiest to calculate. But, you know, he's 65th overall, regardless of how many people are in your league. He's going as the QB7. Now, being that he's such a big LSU fan, I know Matt will have a lot to talk about with Joe Burrow here. But let's kick it off with Curtis because you have been doing the research on the Bengals. I've been talking to you a lot about it, so tell me what's going on.
All right. So as far as research, just a little background on me. I've been drafting underdog since January, so I've been full blown degening it in the draft streets. And Joe Burrow is just a screaming value. Now on underdog, ADPs are a little different because wide receivers are so increased in prices. So wide receivers are a 2 round difference higher in ADP on underdog than on sleeper, which pushes some of the quarterbacks down. So Joe Burrow on underdog, you can get him in the 8th and 9th round, sometimes in the hundreds if like the Jamar Chase guy skips on him.
That is crazy.
And it is crazy. It's because stacking is such a thing in underdog, and I know in redraft you don't necessarily have to have the stats. Although I think it's a very powerful thing to have your stats in
Save that
fantasy football.
Save that thought.
Yeah,
I got you locked and loaded
we'll
on
hold
that
on
one.
to that. But back to Joe Burrow. I mean, this is a guy who 2 years ago threw for. I mean, he was there with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they went to the Super Bowl together, I believe. I mean, he was elite. I mean, you were drafting Joe Burrow in the 4th round the year after that. I mean, and then so last year he comes out, he has the calf injury preseason, messes his wrist up. I mean, the whole team really imploded. I mean, the backup they had put forth, who was it, Browning, put forth a valiant effort, but it was just he couldn't get it done. And the real question on Burrow is like, is his health real? I mean, because upon more research on this injury, no quarterback in the history of the NFL has ever had this wrist injury Joe Burrow has. So there's just no data on like how he's going to bounce back from it. But Chris, you've seen videos. He's out there throwing, looks good. Haven't heard anything bad on Joe Burrow. So I mean,
Yeah.
this price is just, I think, fear-based drafting, which I don't really, unless there's just news preseason about injuries. I don't think we need to be counting injuries from a year ago on these guys that aren't like, ACL tears, RIP Nick Chubb, things like that.
I don't want to talk about it.
It's tough, man.
Yeah, that one sucked.
But, and I do have Burrow
Half
here
Chubb.
at the top. I do have Burrow here at the very top of my last tier of quarterbacks. And he could be all the way up to tier 2 with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I mean, that's the real upside of Joe Burrow, especially if we get the season we've been dreaming of Jamar Chase. I mean, we could be looking back next year talking what were we doing drafting Joe Burrow in the 7th round, like it. I think he's such a huge, huge value, even so more so than someone like Kyler Murray, which I know some people like Kyler Murray a lot more than Joe Burrow because he runs and whatnot. But I mean, Kyler Murray's coming off an ACL tear. I mean, he can't, we can't count that against Kyler Murray. He came back last year, was healthy. He's going to be great. But, I think Burrow's a smash. I mean, I'll probably have more Joe Burrow teams than I've ever had in my life this year if he doesn't come up at all. Like, I think he's such a screaming value.
See,
I'll say this:
go ahead.
the dude got the Eminem hair. He
What?
he got my fucking vote. Okay,
Dude.
Yeah,
he got
dog.
my vote.
He went full send
New man.
with the makeover. I'll give
He
him that one.
did. He did. Joe Burrow's got style points too, man. Like, I mean, if
Yeah.
you're gonna lose with some style.
The dude is walking swagger. That's
Yeah.
well. From a fantasy perspective, I will add nothing to that. I think for me, this is common sense. I joked about Primo being an LSU fan. You can see the hat; he's clearly not. But I am a lifer, and I watched it. I'll never. College football to me is that championship year because I don't think I'll ever see an offense led more efficiently by another field general than what Joe Burrow did. So I can be biased when I see him on the field. I see the good a lot more than I see the bad. But to be fair, he's a lot better than he is bad. So I'm not afraid of the injury. And if anybody's going to take our advice on this, from everything Curtis said, I think we're in agreement. Don't let it scare you. Fantasy is
Yeah.
about risk versus reward. And the quarterback pool is pretty deep this year. If you roll the dice and something happens, you can pivot. But if you roll the dice and he comes back and does what he can do, and I'll talk a little bit more about the statistical aspect of it when we get into receivers, but he can win your league at his ADP. I agree
Yeah.
completely with everything you said. I think he's right up there with Mahomes and Jackson. Maybe a different scoring style in certain situations, but I think the point total can be right there by the end of the season. To me, it's just like let's not be dumb here, guys. We know what Joe Burrow can do.
Joe Burrow has 50-point ceilings.
Right.
Healthy with Jamar Chase. That's real. Like, he's done. He's done it. He's went out there and thrown for 50 fantasy points. So, yeah, don't overthink it. Smash Burrow.
QB1 all day.
I think QB1's tough, but I mean, top 5. I mean, he could finish QB1 100%. But I think that's going to be tough. But I think Joe Burrow we could be looking back and he's easily in the top 5 quarterbacks.
I can tell you this right now. If I could map out my draft, and we'll get to Josh Allen, obviously, he's at the top of the list. But if you're telling me I only have 2 options, I can either take Josh Allen at the top of the 3rd, or I can take Joe Burrow in the middle of the 7th. QB1 or not, that's not a choice for me. Like, at their ADP, I would much rather have Joe Burrow. But again, go Tigers. So
there are some players I'm willing to live and die by, and Joe Burrow might be one of those guys.
Yep.
Hey, I like it. I like it, man.
Joe Cool, man.
Joe Cool.
Feels good to get that out of my system. All right, so you got your
and
next.
We want.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, and we all want a healthy, like, we want to see these Bengals. Like, I mean, it feels like the prince that was promised that we never got with the Bengals. I mean, we're still waiting for that explosion from them that we saw 2 years ago in Jamar Chase's rookie season. But we'll circle back to all of that. But yeah, if you guys are ready to move on, I think I'm got nothing left for Mr. Burrow here.
All right. Yeah. I think we said all we need to say. I hope we did anyway, because all in, baby.
Yeah.
So ready for this one.
Yeah, man. Me too.
This is actually, it's going to be interesting, though. What I want to do with these, since you have your top 3 tiers paired off in 2s, I kind of want to do either ors. Can we do that?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So for the next 2, it'll be Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud's at 5, Richardson's at 6, and you're getting 1 at the top of the 5th, and you're getting 1 in the back of the 6th. So,
yeah.
Actually, let me go first, because I'm going to say some things about C.J. Stroud that you're going to want to argue with.
Okay.
All right. Is that cool?
Of course. Yeah, go for it.
Interesting.
chances are we've had this exact conversation before, but
Oh, I'm sure.
we're
I'm sure.
gonna do it again. So C.J. Stroud was probably the most enticing rookie quarterback addition that we've seen in fantasy football in quite a while. And I'm not talking about pure talent. I'm not talking about just mesmerizing ability. I'm talking about he became the quarterback of the Texans, and everybody remembered that the Texans were a team. Like, I think the difference at face value was just from the eye test. We're not talking about numbers yet. I'm just saying the Texans were a polarizing team to watch, in my opinion, and they hadn't been that way in quite a while before that, is my initial take on CJ Stroud. So he's being drafted, like I said, at the very tippy top of the fifth at 43 overall. As good as he looked last year and as good as the Texans looked last year, he finished as the QB 11. He technically didn't even finish as a starting quarterback in a 10-man league. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. All right? Am I telling you that CJ Stroud shouldn't be on this list? I don't know why he's at number 5 and he's not worth it to me. I'm saying one of those things. I'm not saying he's not top 10. I'm saying last year he didn't finish top 10. But he threw the ball 499 times for 4,100 yards. He is not a rusher. We're looking at a Jordan Love situation here where he doesn't have to pass. His wide receiver room is so deep, and the offense is apparently coached so well that they don't have to design that many runs for him. His problem last year was touchdowns. He's a rookie quarterback. You see that a lot. I'm expecting some of it this year with Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, as excited as I am to see those guys play. But that's the flip side. The good side is the offense didn't change much except they added Stephon Diggs and a running back. So my personal value of CJ Stroud is probably down there. I would honestly probably have him down to the Dak Kyler range. I do think he's overvalued at the beginning of the 5th round just from what we got last year. But I understand completely that I am in the minority there. It's the division is weak. The defenses aren't good. So, I mean, there is a world where he finishes above his ADP, but just from a rookie season, I truly don't understand why the ADP is that high. I mean, that was 4,100 yards in 15 games. He apparently missed 2. I didn't see that. So the dude had himself a year. All right, don't get me wrong. With the addition of a Stephon Diggs that is not going to come in and take over the offense, I mean, he's going to be the wide receiver 3 there, in my opinion, and adding a running back that's going to actually give C.J. Stroud some breathing room. I don't know that he's going to throw the ball 499 times, and I don't know that he's going to have to, because their defense is actually probably the only defense in the division that I think is worth taking a flyer on. Who am I forgetting? Jacksonville, nope. Indianapolis, nope.
No.
Tennessee,
definitely
nope.
not.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So there's a world where he's worth it. I am personally not willing to take him at the QB 5, but there is a world where he's worth it. Now, on the flip side, since we're doing a comparison, I'm a risk over reward player. Anthony Richardson is
Did we lose
also
Chris?
playing in that terrible
Every
division.
damn time.
Did you want to talk about Richardson, or do you want me to rebuttal some of your Stroud?
I'll go ahead. Richardson's not going to take long at all. So
Okay.
I'll just do that. Then y'all can conversely kill me on both.
Okay.
That being said, summing that up, CJ Stroud is not a bad pick. I'm not going to do it in the 5th because he's very athletic, but he's still a pocket passer, and I think there are more values with a few other pocket passers and running gunners. But the dude had an amazing season, and I do hope the best for him. That being said, since we're talking about these two together, Anthony Richardson is the shining definition of risk and reward. All right, we saw 4 games last year. I think we got 1 game of 4 full quarters, and it was a good game.
Yeah.
Listen, Anthony Richardson, here's my thing. He's being taken in the back half of the 6th, and I do think that there are enough quarterbacks in the 11 to 18 range that if you roll the dice and it doesn't work out, statistically speaking, it probably won't from what we saw last year. But if it doesn't, it's not. I don't think it's going to kill your season blowing a 6th-round draft pick on him. I think the upside is QB 1 or 2. I think if we got 17 games of what we got 6 quarters of last year, I don't know that Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts outperforms that. I don't think we're going to get 17 games, just because I'm more of a I'll believe it when I see it kind of guy, and what I've seen so far was not reassuring. That being said, the dude is a freak athlete, and with the QB pool being as deep as it is, I honestly don't mind to take the gamble. I really don't. If you miss a pick, you miss a pick. If you look at we'll just use receivers for example, because that's kind of what we did the research on in this one. The receivers going around him are George Pickens, T. Higgins, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen.
I mean, those aren't scrubs, but I hear what you're saying.
They're not scrubs. Like they're not. But at the same time, it's like if you want to roll the dice, I don't judge you for it. I don't like C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson at their ADP, and I'm a risk versus reward guy. So
Okay.
if the risk is too high for me, because I'm a gambling man, but if the risk is too high for me, it's probably too high. It's probably a lot higher than it should be. So I will sit back and die in my hole while you guys brutally murder me about C.J. Stroud.
I'll let Curtis handle C.J. Stroud. That dude made me a believer in the in one of the playoff games against Georgia that year. And for those that say he can't run, the dude can freaking run. He ran that one game, I promise you. My thing is Anthony Richardson. I did not choose him last year. He was chosen for me with the auto draft, and would never have chosen him because of, look, I'm a Georgia fan, and I hold that in my blood, okay? I don't draft. I tried not to draft anybody from Florida. I absolutely loathe Florida. But I got stuck with him. And guess what? As a primo, I hold grudges for my life. And Anthony Richardson ended up getting hurt for the rest of the year. And he screwed me. Okay? Plain and simple. He screwed me. And I'm tired of people saying he's a freak athlete. Yeah, well, he hasn't shown it in any of the levels of football that we have seen him in yet. So.
Oh, he showed it for 60 whole minutes. He showed it.
He did.
Sounds like my sex life, man. I can show it for just a few minutes.
I was gonna say 60. All right, dog.
Not 60 minutes. Not 60 minutes. Not 60 minutes. Little spurts here or there. Nah, dude. You're not gonna be able to pay me to draft Anthony Richardson this year.
Oh man, that's primo with the heat on that one. He said Richardson's dead to me, homie.
I thought I was bad. Primo just firing off strays, man.
You sure did, man.
Dude,
no.
I would rather draft Tom Brady than Anthony Richardson.
That's a bold take. I mean,
that's a
Tom
TikTok.
Brady, he's
that's a
retired.
TikTok.
Yeah, that's a TikTok bit right there for sure.
I will die on that hill.
All right. Well, on CJ Stroud, I mean, there is a discrepancy on where I'm drafting right now in underdog and sleeper. Right now, CJ Stroud, if you want him, you have to take him in the 5th, but he is falling to the 6th and 7th. And Anthony Richardson is going in the 4th and 5th. Like, if he falls into the 5th, you're lucky. And there, I think the price for Richardson is a little rich. Like Chris said, Richardson can finish number 1 overall. He's got the ceiling. And recent quotes from Mr. Shane Steichen as head coach, we're not going to limit his rushing. There's going to be none of this. We're going to hold him back to protect him. You don't do that with a player like Richardson. You just let him loose, let him do his thing. The same with Richardson. Can he pass intermediate? I mean, that was his big flaw in college. He can throw a 80-yard bomb, but he can't throw a 10-yard pass in the middle of the field, so things like, I guess it doesn't matter with, we're talking about the quarterback. It's his rushing. That game Chris alluded to, I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns and like 2 passing touchdowns. It was something absolutely crazy. But it feels like we're taking the opposite approach with Richardson than with Burrow. It's like people are worried about Burrow's wrist, his health. Richardson tore his shoulder apart last year. And that was the second injury that put him out. He also had a concussion that held him out a week and a half before that. So, I mean, there is a lot of risk with Richardson. But like Chris said, risk reward. The reward is he stays healthy and he can potentially finish number 1 overall. Like he has the ceiling there. As far as
Sorry.
pricing goes, though, if you have to take Richardson in the 4th or 5th round, I probably won't be getting much of him. I think it's too rich there. I think some of the players, skill wise, are too valuable. But if he's fallen to the 6th in sleeper, I mean, I think he's an auto click there in the 6th. I think what we saw in just those few games from Richardson is athleticism. They just added A.D. Mitchell, a deep ball specialist. I mean, Pittman, Mr. Reliable there over the middle. We'll see if Richardson can get the ball to Pittman accurately or not. But I mean, we don't know how many picks Richardson's going to throw over a full season. It could be a Jameis Winston type season. Not Winston. Who's the quarterback, Chris? I always calling him. It is Jameis Winston, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
That's
could
your
have
go-to comp. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the passing goes, we all know the rushing upside with Richardson. But to Stroud, though, I mean, I think Stroud is a front runner for MVP this season at quarterback. And Chris Point, he doesn't run because he doesn't have to. He'd rather just scramble and throw it 50 yards to Tank Dell, Nico Collins, yeah, Steph Diggs, who they just acquired. They have easily the most elite wide receiving room in the league, I think. And they are in one of the weakest conferences. Like Chris said, they're not playing against defenses. They just don't exist in that conference. It's going to be, I mean, and sure, they've got uh, Joe Mixon, who's well past his prime as a rusher. I mean, I think Stroud's going to throw for 4,500 to 5,000 yards and potentially 40 touchdowns. I mean, I think this kid goes nuclear this year. And a 5th round for a pocket passer is rich, but I mean, if you believe in him, you believe in him. And I'm taking Stroud in the 5th round if I've got any of his receivers. I mean, I think this team is loaded. I think they have a head coach who's going to be talked about like Mike Tomlin years from now. Like, I mean, I think they have a really good head coach. I think the franchise is running smooth now. I mean, I think it's just to the moon with CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is the new Mahomes. That's how I feel about him. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who might say that, but that's who I comp Patrick Mahomes to. So, I mean, I'm sorry, that's who I comp CJ Stroud to is Patrick Mahomes, and I think he is going to be elite this season.
Agreed. I mean, they have 3 receivers in the top 26.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was with one of them breaking his leg halfway through the season. Like Tank Dell, we'll talk about him in the receivers when we get there, but I think Tank Dell is a smash this year as well. So yeah, I mean, but to the downside with CJ Stroud, like Chris said, CJ Stroud had that one spike week last year of 50 points, and I think that's when everybody was like, "Oh, CJ Stroud." But Chris is right. After that, he had a consistency that was less than desirable. I mean, he wasn't doing anything crazy. He just looked. You just watch Stroud. Like that's what I'm saying. Like he may not put up the numbers you wanted from a top 10 quarterback last year, but you watch him play. I mean, he looks incredible out there. The skill, like I said, I think projection wise, I project a top 5 season from Stroud this year. Like I think he could finish number 1 right there. Same with Richardson. The rushing thing is the only thing you miss with Stroud. But like I said, he scrambles. He doesn't need to rush. He scrambles and throws touchdowns.
Okay, I'll take that smoke. That wasn't as bad as I initially thought it was going to be. And I don't necessarily disagree with you. I don't think the guy isn't going to have a top 5 season. I think he may or may not. I think the potential's there. I don't think he's going to have a season that warrants me blowing my turn 4 pick on him, is my only point.
We're not getting a discount on Stroud, and one would
You're
hope you
paying
would.
for it. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's my point is if you want it, you got to get it.
Yeah,
So,
I think this year the market has shown that it's honestly caught on to trends a lot quicker than the market ever has in the past. Going all the way to Marvin Harrison Jr., who will talk about receivers, but I mean, we've never had to pay end of first, early second round prices for a rookie wide receiver. And that's all because we watched Jamar Chase do it and we're like, I'm not going to wait until the fourth round to draft this rookie. I'm taking him in the second and he's going to smash. But I mean, I think the same things happen with Stroud. Like we're not getting a discount of like he wasn't consistent last year, so maybe we can get Stroud in this eighth, ninth round. Like no, people are projecting him for MVP seasons, and so we're having to take him in the fifth. So discounts this year are far and few between, unfortunately. So
all right.
yeah.
Um, all right, we got 4 left. Before
hmm
we move into that, I'm going to take just a quick second. I'm going to shout out our sponsor slash parent podcast, and that is going to be the Two Game Podcast, hosted by our very own Matt Primo, right there in the red. And thanks, man. I mean, you helped us get this going. You provided us with the backup and the equipment to kind of help us hopefully launch something here. So you have my thanks. And right now, we are sharing a Patreon because we're new and we don't know how far we want to take this, but that is going to be patreon.com/2game, patreon.com/2game. Um, guys, Two Game Podcast is incredible. I'm going to just spend a minute here to plug it. I didn't, I don't know if Matt wanted me to do this or not, but I am going to talk about it. This dude puts his effort and his life into growing this and building it, and it is just the epitome of Nerd Central. If you're like me and you like anything nerdy, we're talking video games, movie reviews, video game showcase reviews, movie previews, video game previews. There's something there for everybody, and whether you like to stay on top of that stuff and you just want a second opinion, or whether you're like me and you're a nerd at heart, but life won't allow you to always be a nerd on the outside, let Two Game do the work for you. Matt's going to host it more times than not. His co-host and my friend Christian Valencia is going to be right there with him. They shoot the crap with one another. They have a great chemistry. It's awesome to listen to. And on the rare occasion, and in my opinion, the delightful occasion, I actually get to sub in myself sometimes and talk about the nerdy stuff I don't get to do on a daily basis. So, a lot of shenanigans. But as far as Fantasy Football 101, if you sign up to the Patreon, from me, you're going to get weekly ranking updates, and we're going to do our own league within the Patreon that's going to be only for Patreon members. So if you want an extra league, there's several tiers you can sign up at. But you also get everything on the Two Game side. So, like I said, Patreon exclusive episodes. You get access to the Discord where we just talk about literally anything and everything. And you get to meet a lot of cool people. I didn't know hardly anybody going into it, and I feel like I know a lot of these people pretty well now just from the Discord. Honestly, there's something there for everybody. So one more time, that is going to be patreon.com/2game. Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate that, sir. Making me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt. Just echoing what Chris said. Thank you so much for putting this together. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing other than just what I do every morning. So I appreciate you
Yeah,
putting all the work in, getting us set up.
truth be told, man,
No,
I'd be lost. I'd be right there with you, buddy. I'd be
Yeah.
lost.
it's all good, man. I appreciate y'all supporting and I appreciate y'all doing this. I'm here for the ride, just like y'all are. But I do have
Absolutely.
equipment for y'all, so hopefully it'll make the experience a little bit better.
Well, maybe I can find a phone that won't disconnect halfway through the episode, and we can actually mosey on, huh? But
Every day.
all right, so our next two side-by-sides are going to be a lot like the last two, except instead of a lot of questions surrounding both of them, it's mainly just do you want a runner or do you want a passer? So right now we're looking at Lamar Jackson at the end of the fourth and Pat Mahomes in the middle of the fourth. Now, I went off about CJ Stroud for way longer than I ever should have, so I'll let either one of you guys that want to take it have the floor first on these two.
Sure. Yeah. And these are, I've got these guys. These are my tier two quarterbacks because I think Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts have separated themselves individually.
Agreed.
But the person of these two who are close to them is Mr. Lamar Jackson because he runs, he fast. But these guys, like, I've got a question mark here next to their names. Are they worth it? Are they worth their draft picks this year? We're getting a discount on Mahomes that we've never seen. We were just talking about how discounts are few and far between this year. Mahomes has it. And
He does.
the question this year is going to be, does Patrick Mahomes take a step forward to how he was 2 years ago when he was having his, you know, close to 5,000 yards, 40 touchdown season? And on average, the Kansas City Chiefs have scored, I want to say it was like 150 more points than they did last year. Or are we going to see, Chris pointed this out to me yesterday, more of a dynasty approach, like how New England did it with Gronk and Tom Brady? Are these guys just going to game manage, let their defense do it? Are we going to see an elite season from Pacheco and Mahomes just as more, managing the game, coming through when he has to, not looking to pass for a ton of yardage and let their defense do it? Personally, I don't think that's the case. I think they drafted Xavier Worthy in the first round. I think Rashid Rice, if he doesn't get suspended for half the season, is going to come into a year two real breakout. And let's not forget about Hollywood Brown. I mean, I know he had a lackluster season with the Cards last year, but I mean, he was dealing with an injury and he produced with Dobbs. Like, I mean, the guy didn't have a lot of touchdowns, but he was putting up 17-point PPR games every week with Joshua Dobbs out there. Like, I think Hollywood Brown is a good receiver, and I think this is the best receiving core Patrick Mahomes has ever had. I mean, we give receiver glow ups to crappy quarterbacks and move them up, but we're not doing it with easily the best quarterback in real football life now. So I think the discount on Patrick Mahomes is just. I think Patrick Mahomes is one of the easiest clicks there in the fourth round of all fantasy football. I mean, I think he goes nuclear this year. Or, I could be wrong and he finishes, like, was he even, what was he finish number 8 quarterback last year, something disappointing like
7 or
that?
8, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're getting the discount here on him. So I don't even think, I think it's big win, little loss with Patrick Mahomes. Like, you spend a fourth, sure, you'll be disappointed you get number 8 overall. You can get that here at the bottom in the ninth, 10th round. So I guess it is kind of a bigger loss than not. That's my Patrick Mahomes spill. On Lamar Jackson, I mean, it's just, guy's an athletic freak. I mean, he could finish up here with Hurts and, not Josh, I'm sorry, Lamar Jackson. He could finish up here with Hurts and Josh Allen easy. I mean, he finished MVP last year. It's his second MVP season in his career. They did bring in Derrick Henry, lost to Gus Bus, but I mean, their offensive line got far worse than it was last year. That's a real thing. So I think there's going to be more scrambling and running from Lamar Jackson this year. I mean, they don't have a real deep threat outside of Tez Walker, who's a rookie. So I honestly, like, outside of just liking the fact that Lamar Jackson runs, I don't have a big take on Lamar Jackson. I think he's priced well. I think that Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack is hard to ignore. They're at the 4-5 turn. It's an easy click for me as well. But if I had to choose between these two, I think I'm on the Patrick Mahomes side personally. But that's me. I don't know about you, Chris, where you're at with it.
Um, Kind of the opposite.
Okay, I dig that,
but
man. I get that.
but not
Yeah.
not to the point of serious contest. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
we're about to have the CJ Stroud debate all over again.
Yeah.
I do, on Pat Mahomes, I do think the Chiefs are gonna. I'm not gonna say take a step back. It's Andy Reid. It's Pat Mahomes. They can score 60 points any given week. You will have those weeks. But I do think that they are in championship mode now, kind of like you mentioned the Patriots from a year or two, or from a few years ago, where you saw them win games by running the ball, you saw them win games by throwing the ball, you saw them win games because they had 2 defensive touchdowns. So I don't think that what we're gonna get is Patrick Mahomes from 2 years ago, where he had a 450-point fantasy season, and if you had him, you won. If you didn't, try again next year. I don't think we're going to get that because I don't think they need to. I do think they're taking into account the fact that they have a fresh receiving core And, there's some younger guys there that are going to have to learn that very complicated playbook. Travis Kelce's not getting any younger. He's still good, but I think they're planning to play 20 games instead of 17. So
Hmm.
you're going to have the weeks where they're playing better teams and it's coming down to the wire and Mahomes has to do Mahomes things. But I think the days of being up 28 to nothing in the first quarter and just leaving your foot on the accelerator are gone, at least for now. I'm not saying it'll never happen again. I'm just saying they didn't do it last year, and it turned out they didn't have to. So, not really from a fantasy perspective, but just from a football perspective, my logic and fear there is just kind of, why are we going to risk getting our people hurt doing all this showy stuff when we're just trying to keep stacking rings, you know?
Yeah.
That being said, in the middle of the fourth round, go get your Patrick Mahomes. I got no issue with that because he is the best quarterback in the NFL. Maybe
Yeah.
not always the best for fantasy, but I do believe he's the best in the league.
Yeah. I
I
do
just
too.
think I think you're gonna have to go into it knowing that I don't think he's an every single week 35-point quarterback anymore. And for
Sure.
home leagues, I don't think his ADP is gonna reflect where he's being drafted at.
I don't think so either. I think you're going to get some of your
Yeah,
old guys that haven't studied anything or looked at anything, and they see Patrick Holmes in the
in
fourth
the
round.
third round,
Shit,
yes,
I had to take him in
please.
the first last year. He's right now taking him in the second. It's gone. Like, so yeah,
Correct.
you're probably right
So
about that. That's a good point.
if he's sitting there in the fourth and you're happy with your probably two receivers and a running back or vice versa, whatever, sure. You're not going to
Oh,
hear me tell you not to do it.
excuse
I
me.
think he's definitely worth that over the course of a season.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, however, if I have the 39th pick, somebody better take Lamar Jackson before I have the 39th pick. That's all
Hey,
I'm going to say there. I mean, like that people
MVP?
try to plan around him and bottle up the middle of the field to stop the run and make him throw the ball. That doesn't work because he can throw the ball.
Yeah.
He even when you don't think they have weapons, he has weapons. Zay Flowers coming into his sophomore season, and he looked good last year. Um, Mark Andrews is apparently super healthy. Isaiah Likely apparently looks like the best receiver in camp, and you can't just spy Lamar Jackson anymore because whether he's old or not, you've got Derrick Henry to bottle up in the middle of the field.
True.
This offense is going to put up points. Is Derrick Henry going to take every single touchdown in the run game? A lot of them if he stays healthy, but not all of them. Lamar Jackson's still going to get his. But when you get down to the 5-yard line, everybody knows you're giving Derrick Henry the ball. So what's a good coach going to do there? You know,
Give Derrick Henry the ball.
once. And if that doesn't work, then they're going to pull some trickery, and Lamar Jackson will get tush push style touchdowns out of it. They're not going to do the tush push because with Lamar Jackson doesn't have to. You fake the handoff, he rolls out, nobody can catch him. You know, there is value to be had with Lamar Jackson in the third round, in my opinion, and he's being
Yeah.
taken at the back end of the fourth. So
Yeah. That's hard to argue with. It's hard to argue. And
between the
as far
two,
as
give me Jackson, but again, no problem with Mahomes.
yeah, I mean, if you're just doing it by fantasy math, Jackson's the pick above Mahomes. The fact that Mahomes is ranked above Jackson is surprising to me. I know they go right there together, but the fact that Jackson runs and Mahomes doesn't, you know, but Mahomes scrambles and he gets those long passes with guys getting loose. And when you have someone like Xavier Worthy, the fastest player in NFL history, I think he's going to get loose for some big plays. So I just, the Mahomes over Jackson, I thought was just a me take, but it looks like the market is wanting Mahomes over
Oh, it sure
Jackson,
does.
which,
No,
which
that yeah.
I don't disagree with. I mean, I think Mahomes is going to be far more consistent than Lamar Jackson. I think you have those games from Lamar Jackson where you have, you know, 175 yards passing, a couple yards rushing, but like no touchdowns because maybe one touchdown because Derrick Henry just has those games, but which you alluded to, but I mean, I mean, we're talking about the elite guys here. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of them. I feel like the real question with these guys, are they worth the pick? That early
True.
draft capital, which brings us to the draft capital guys, the guys, and Mr. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, last year's 1-2 by a big chunk, especially with Mr. Josh Allen. He had
Yep.
quite the gap on the field.
Let's
Uh,
see. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No, you
oh
roll
yeah.
with it, buddy.
So Josh Allen. Oh, we'll start with Jalen Hurts. We're working from top to bottom here. Jalen Hurts, number 2 quarterback. Um,
Mid
13 or
fourth round
14,
ADP.
mid fourth round ADP, which
Actually, the pick right before Patrick Mahomes is noteworthy.
that's crazy to me. I think Jalen Hurts is the best pick in fantasy football right now at that ADP. I really do. I mean, this guy wasn't healthy last year as far as optimal performance. We all know he had a knee issue going on, so he wasn't really racking up yardage with runs, but he had 100 tush pushes for Chris. I'm sure you got the number there. What was it? 14 rushing touchdowns?
15.
15 rushing touchdowns, and I guarantee
15.
you 10 of them were off tush pushes, probably, maybe 13. But, I mean, and this guy, I mean, he finished number 2, and that was with 13 interceptions last year as well. I mean, so he had a bad passing year, Jalen Hurts did last year. But I put a lot of that to the fact that he wasn't healthy. They didn't have a real offensive coordinator. They just moved someone from in-house up to offensive coordinator when Shane Steichen left. They had no creativity in the play calling field. They were just essentially telling AJ Brown to run deep, and Jalen Hurts just out there playing backyard ball. It felt like a lot of times when they were playing. So I feel like we saw one of the most inefficient seasons from the Eagles last year. I think Kellen Moore comes into this offense, makes it a compatible passing offense. I think Devontae Smith, AJ Brown are complete smashes. I think Jalen Hurts gives you double digit rushing touchdowns again, along with additional rushing yards, because I believe he'll be healthy this year. I haven't heard any injury FUD on him yet. And I think Jalen Hurts will finish number 1 quarterback overall and supplant Josh Allen. And the fact that you're getting him in the 4th round is laughable to me. Uh, so yeah, that's my Jalen Hurts stance. I think he is the best pick in fantasy football right now, especially
All
because you
right.
get to correlate him with uh, AJ Brown's number 1 receiver so easily. Such a comfy click.
Yeah. Listen, there's no point in turning the top 2 or even the top 3 or 4 into a debate. Any of these guys
Yeah,
can finish at number 1, and I completely hear your Jalen Hurts case. I'd be fine with either one of them. And I kind of had a preview of some of the FAQs that we had picked out to answer to close out the episode. So I'll save my Josh Allen take for that. Actually, let's just roll right into that. We're at the top
yeah, let's
anyway.
do it. Yeah.
We'll hand that over to Primo. I think he gathered them up and.
Well, I do have a question,
All right.
and I kind of want to. I kind of have an opinion on it as well, so I want to get Charles' opinion. Josh Allen is he really much better than everyone else at his current ADP?
Curtis just gave us his Hurts take, so I'm assuming that all in all he would disagree.
Uh, I mean, the fact that he's going to the 3rd is pretty wild as far as what we've had to pay for these type of elite quarterbacks in the past. But I mean, yeah, I would disagree. I don't think there's that big of a difference between Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I mean, there was last year, obviously, but again, I think Jalen Hurts had knee issues going on. It's just with Josh Allen, I am so nervous about the offense around him. I do think they're going to take last year's Kansas City's attempt to this year and just low overall passing offense. I mean, we don't even know who the number 1 receiver is. Um, I think James Cook is going to have a great year. I think Joe Brady's just going to run the ball. It's going to be run, 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 short dink and dunks to Dalton Kincaid, Curtis Samuel. And, I mean, but Josh Allen's big thing is rushing. I mean, he had 15 rushing touchdowns. Isn't that right, Chris? 15?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, 15,
I
same
was.
as Mr. Hurts. And that was with no tush push. That was Josh Allen out there being Josh Allen, the Stallion, just running. I mean, he was running.
Dude's a Clydesdale.
Dude is a beast. I mean, you're never going to see me bet against Josh Allen. I think he's great. I just think the offense as a whole takes a step back, tries to be a little more efficient, less hero ball from Josh Allen. And I just think, I just think they take a little step back and Josh Allen loses that number one mantle this year.
All right, so minus the fact that you think Philly's done everything they need to do, which they have. I'm not going to argue that.
Mm-hmm.
They have had just...
They had an incredible offseason.
They had probably just the GOAT offseason, honestly.
Yeah.
But minus the fact that you think Hurts is going to take a step up, let me advocate for Josh Allen for just a second. Because, honestly, and, this is coming from a guy that's not an early quarterback guy. And because I'm not an early quarterback guy, I've never really drafted either one of these guys. So I knew they were dominant, but I guess it's just poor stupid me. I didn't realize how dominant. But over the last 4 years, the single highest fantasy output that Jalen Hurts has had in one season. He's played 17 games last year. He played 15 the 3 years prior. And his highest season was a 383. Now it didn't feel quite as dominant as last year did, but fantasy-wise, it actually was more dominant. He was more efficient of a passer. He didn't have nearly as many picks, but he still had 13 rushing touchdowns, 3,700 passing yards, and, 800 yards on the ground. So a 383. And for Josh Allen, over the last 4 years, the lowest season he has had is a 397.
Hard to argue with those numbers.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you because I think Jalen Hurts is in line to, I'm not going to say supplant. I think that's it's not super bold, but it's probably a little more bold than I would be. But I see the progression Philly made, and I see the regression that Buffalo seems to have made. That being said, I have a lot of confidence in some of their newer weapons. Like, you can't sell me any more than I already am sold on Keon Coleman. We've had that discussion. I think he's just an automatic, here you go, Josh, have a new present. But when you look at their numbers from just last year specifically, 15 rushing touchdowns versus 15 rushing touchdowns. Hurts threw 15 picks. Allen actually threw 18 picks.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
He did. So it's like both of them. Go ahead.
I'll say Allen's been known for, a little bit of his wild ball throwing picks, but I didn't know he had 18 last year. That's stout.
It was. And you're right. You're going to get that with Josh Allen. So the last 4 years where he's given you 400 fantasy points a year, he's thrown 18, 14, 15, and 10. So
he's going to throw picks.
He's going to throw picks. But when you break it down just a little bit further and you look at the game log, so week 11 is when the offense shifted, Stephon Diggs became all but irrelevant, and James Cook took over the running game, and it really just turned into like an option without an option kind of offense.
And that's when Joe Brady took over offensive
That's when Joe Brady took over. You are correct. So we got 24, 41, 22, 17. To be fair, the 17 was hosting the Cowboys. 26, 22, 25. So he was still fine. He was probably averaging in the early to mid 20s after that, and he was probably averaging in the mid to late 20s before that. So he did take a step back, but that was also a mid-season shift with a bye week to prep for it, and now we've had a full off season. So I'm not advocating for anybody to pick either one of these quarterbacks. If I get either one of these quarterbacks, I'm fine at quarterback. Like, unless I see an injury that I have to address, I'm not even drafting a second one until I have a bye week that I got to cover somebody for.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
I
don't think any of these quarterbacks require a second quarterback. Just a little caveat. If you get any of these top 10, I don't think you need to have a backup. Outside of for playoff weeks, but we can talk about.
Sure.
We can delve off into that later.
But my point is, when I'm looking at Josh Allen at the beginning of the third and Jalen Hurts in the middle of the fourth, that's a close comparison to me because historically Allen has been enough better that it would justify the pick. But what made me decide on it is when I know I'm going to sacrifice a certain pick for a position, I look at what I'm going to have to replace the other position that I'm sacrificing for when I get back around to that ADP. So just for reference, Josh Allen's going 23. Your wide receivers right by him are DK Metcalf on one side and, oh no, I'm sorry, looked at that wrong. Brandon Ayuk on one side and Mike Evans on the other.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have, we'll just say Brandon Ayuk and Jalen Hurts, or you can have Josh Allen and Deebo Samuel or DJ Moore. So as far as just taking a single position, it's pick your poison. But in building a team when you're trying to draft, you just have to take into consideration what's my team going to look like 3 picks from now if I take this guy now. So if I got to look at it that way, I think I want Josh Allen in the 3rd and Deebo in the 4th. But conversely, Brandon Ayuk in the 3rd and Jalen Hurts in the 4th feels strong too. It's really just pick your poison. For somebody that does not want to draft a quarterback with my first 5 picks unless I feel like I absolutely have to, I don't think either one of these are bad where they're at. They're just that good. They're that big of
Yeah.
difference makers.
I'm going to have a hard time leaving most of my drafts without Jalen Hurts. And if Josh Allen falls, I mean, it's a smash too in any of your
Sure.
drafts. Like, we've never got a discount on these elite quarterbacks like we are this year. And I plan, especially if you're playing in, your 10-man leagues, 8-man leagues, smaller leagues where that individual position matters more. I mean, these guys are just smashes. If anything, you can move them up in ADP in those leagues just to have that positional advantage on your rest of your league mates. Yeah, I think they're absolute smashes. I don't think you can really go wrong with either one of them. Personally, I want Hurts because on like a micro level, I mean, you get to stack Hurts with AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, whereas with Josh Allen, you're having to look at Keon Coleman, a rookie, Curtis Samuel, who I like, but is, just a veteran, gadgety wide receiver. Or you're
That's
having to
fair.
reach high on
Yeah,
Kincaid,
that's completely fair.
yeah. And I just, yeah, it's just for me, like, it's not a hot take either. Like, all the number 2 quarterbacks going to finish number 1, like, whatever. But I think Jalen Hurts is not only a cheaper, but a better pick than Josh Allen for the 2024 football season.
Did that clear up literally anything for you, Primo? I know we gave you 2 very different answers, but honestly, I think we're both right and we're both wrong. It's just pick your poison. They're both that good, so.
No, that pretty much answered it. I mean, I was gonna throw out the stats for Josh Allen because I was kind of leaning towards Hurts, but I've drafted Josh Allen before, and I usually do if I can. I mean, like you said, he's gonna throw the interceptions, he's gonna have fumbles, he's gonna turn it over, but he's usually gonna throw it over the yard and get you rushing touchdowns in. I mean, he had like 500 yards, and then what you said, 15 touchdowns rushing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, Josh Allen, I'd put in that category of live and die by for me personally. Like y'all said, I kind of trust him a little bit more than I do Jalen Hurts at this point. But I don't know.
Yeah,
Probably Hurts probably has a little bit higher upside for me,
Fair.
but lower floor.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Everybody give us a listen, give us a shout, let us know what you like, let us know what we can do different. Anybody in the Patreon that hears it, let me know in Discord or reach out. And thank you guys for, at the very least, checking us out. I think that's all we're going to do for now, and we'll get back to you guys as soon as we can with wide receivers.
All right. Again, Primo, thank you so much for everything. Chris, always good to see you, brother. Thank you, guys.
Yes, indeed.
Good seeing you
Peace.
again, man.